This tea is really good. Do you know where it's from?
It's actually from India by a brand named Lipton.
Wow, that's really interesting. I wonder if tea is important in Indian culture.
I heard there's this really great video up on YouTube. Why don't we watch it?
Oh, that's awesome. Let's stream it on YouTube.
All right, let me get it out right now. Tea is a refreshing and aromatic drink made steeping the leaves of Camellia sinensis in hot water. It is a rich source of xenobiotics, a class of secondary metabolites present in tea plants for their natural defense.
Tea is the second most widely consumed beverage worldwide, following only water. The amount of tea produced worldwide totaled 5.2 billion metric tons. The main producers of tea include China, India, Kenya, Sri Lanka, and Indonesia.
India is the second largest tea producer in the world after China, and 70% of it is consumed within India. Believed to have been serendipitously discovered in 2737 BC by mythical Chinese sage Emperor Shennong, tea has a rich history.
In India, tea is supposed to have been drunk for medicinal purposes since 750 BC, but there are no formal records that can empirically claim this. Its use was documented in the ancient Indian epic Ramayana in the form of Sanjivani herb. It is known that the tea plant was a wild plant in some parts of India, and one can only speculate that the tea leaves were widely used in ancient India. The Singpho tribe and the Khatmi tribe, inhabitants of the regions where the Camellia sinensis plant grew native, have been consuming tea since the 12th century. It is also possible that tea may have been used under another name. Frederick R. Danoy, in his essay Tea as Soma, argues that tea was perhaps better known as Soma in Indian mythology.
The next recorded reference to tea in India after the 12th century dates to the 16th century. In 1598, when a Dutch traveler, Jan Huygen van Linschoten, noted in a book that the leaves of the Assam tea plant were used by Indians as a vegetable, eaten with garlic oil, and as a drink.
In 1823, Scottish explorer Robert Bruce discovered a native tea plant that was growing in the upper Brahmaputra Valley and being brewed by the local Singpho tribe. Assamese nobleman Miniram Dewan gave the vital information to Robert and his brother. The tribe would produce what was later found to be tea by plucking tender leaves of a wild plant and drying them under the sun. The tea samples Robert Bruce collected from this region were dispatched for testing in the Botanical Garden at Calcutta on Christmas Eve of 1834 and found to be tea. This tea was named Camellia sinensis var Assamica Kitamura. Miniram Dewan went on to become the first Indian to undertake private tea cultivation in Assam.
It was only during the early 19th century, under the British rule, that a native variety of tea was formally discovered and commercially developed. Tea plantations were started in India by the British East India Company in the 1830s, primarily for export to Britain. During this time, efforts were being made by the East India Company to break the Chinese monopoly over global tea trade. The demand for tea in Britain was high, and they were buying it in large quantities from the Chinese. It became obvious that the British addiction to tea was getting exorbitantly expensive and unsustainable.
This realization led to a sustained effort by the British to understand tea production and cultivate the crop in India. One of the initiatives taken by the company in lieu of this situation was to start producing tea within the British colonies, including India. For this, Chinese tea seeds were reportedly smuggled into the colonies, including India and Sri Lanka, and tested for commercial viability. However, these Chinese plants were unsuitable to the conditions in Assam. On the other hand, the local variety that was discovered by Robert Bruce fostered well in the tropical environment of Assam and was found to be commercially viable. It was after many trials and extended periods of dedicated efforts that the first British-led commercial tea plantation was established in 1837 in Chilbua in Upper Assam.
The positive results from Assam and Darjeeling inspired many similar endeavors towards cultivating tea across the entire foothills of the Himalayas and other parts of India. By 1853, India's tea exports had reached 183.4 tons. By 1863, 78 plantations had been set up in the regions of India. They further soared to 6,700 tons by 1870 and 35,274 tons by 1885. By the turn of the century, Assam became the leading tea-producing region in the world.
Tea production in India has continued to prosper after 1947, when India gained independence from the British Empire. Tea production has increased by more than 250% since 1947. The Marwari community played a key role in this regard, as many Marwaris took over tea plantations from British owners.
By building on a proud legacy of enterprise that spanned nearly 2.5 centuries, India has acquired an exalted status on the global tea map. The Indian tea industry has grown to own many global tea brands and has evolved into one of the most technologically equipped tea industries in the world. There are over 2,000 producers of tea, and at least 10 distinct tea-producing regions can be identified, with the majority of the estates located in Assam, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, and Kerala. Many of these estates produce very high-quality teas and have earned a place for themselves in the international tea market. India is ranked 4th in terms of tea exports, which reached 232 million kilograms during 2015 to 2016, and were valued at US$ of 686 million. According to estimates, the tea industry is India's second largest employer. It employs over 3.5 million people across some 1,686 estates and 150,000 small holdings. All varieties of tea are produced by India. While black tea accounts for around 89% of the production, orthodox and green tea and instant tea account for the remaining 11%.
There are many other popular variations depending on regional and cultural affiliations. By and large, tea drinkers in India drink milk tea. Unlike the British cup of tea, tea in India is not served in a set where the leaves are steeped separately. Popular tea brews in Assam are sa, ranga sa, red tea without milk, and gakhir sa, milk tea. In West Bengal and Bangladesh, it is called cha. In Hindi-speaking North India, popular tea brews are masala chai, kadak chai, typically a feature of the mountain community of North India. This is a very strongly brewed tea, almost to the point of bitterness. Malai Mar Ki Cha, where a generous dollop of full-fat cream is spooned into the cup of tea, are some of the most popular variations.
Among Indians, tea drinking in the modern sense started only in the early 1900s, when the British-owned Indian Tea Association began an earnest effort to popularize tea in India. They organized several promotional campaigns. Tea stalls were set up in cities and towns, factories were encouraged to give tea breaks to their workers, and even home demonstrations were organized. When the railroads arrived, tea stalls were set up at rail stations as well. After a slow and dispiriting start, tea drinking gradually spread in India, gaining momentum after the Second World War. By the end of the 1900s, Indians were drinking almost 70% of a huge crop of 715,000 tons per year.
Tea is made both at home and outside. Within the home, although not ritualized, tea is used within daily life. 90% of all Indian households are regular tea drinkers due to its relatively cheap, affordable, and addictive nature. Tea is also used to offer welcome drinks and facilitate guests in houses of India. Outside the home, tea is most commonly and easily found at the ubiquitous tea stalls that dot just about every street in India, and has become a part of the urban landscape and a cultural institution. Tea today has become an integral part of life in India.